Hello, lifestyle dentists. In this episode, we're going to be covering a conference I attended recently with Alex and Leila Hormozi with acquisition.com in Las Vegas. Great conference on scaling, and we're going to dive right into it. It got a nice manual that went with it. Scaling workshop. Also, too, if you're on YouTube, we're in our new studio, my home office studio. So kind of fun. Try this out as well. So, but get right into it with Alex and Leila Hormozi. If you're not familiar with them, he and his wife both grew a gym business. They first had their own gyms, and then went into a gym launching business where they would help other gyms to launch their business, bring in a bunch of clients, and then they would get paid based on how they, how many clients they would bring in. And then they eventually transferred that into almost like a franchise type model. It wasn't a franchise, but they would pay to get their leads, their scripts, their systems, everything, and then they would show them how to scale their gyms. Eventually sold that. They also started a supplement company, started a software company that went with their business, ended up selling it, and for around $100 million with by the time it was all said and done. And they're both, he's in his early 30s, she's in her late 20s, so very young, dynamic couple. They'll be billionaires, I should say, and not long. So it's amazing what they're doing. But had some great ideas, and I followed them for a little bit on YouTube, and both of them are very business savvy, had some great strategies, great information on YouTube for free. And I figured, hey, it might be worth going to their seminar and learning directly from them. So it was great. Couple big take homes that helped me and hopefully will help you as dental professionals, dental CEOs of your own dental practice. And starting with one of the biggest take homes I got was that the number one role for the boss, for the business owner, for the CEO is to eliminate the top constraint for the business. Meaning we all have challenges in a business. There's all kinds of things pulling at our time, at our money, at our resources. There are bringing in new patients. There's buying new supplies. There's legal compliance. There's OSHA. There's all kinds of different factors that we have to look at, marketing, yada, yada. But as the CEO, your number one job is to find out what's the top constraint. Meaning if your number one constraint is you're not getting enough patients coming through the door, then that's the number one area you should focus all your attention on. How do we get more patients coming in the door? If your number one constraint is maybe it's a capacity issue, maybe it's just you're the only doc, you're getting burnt out, you got patients ringing the phones off the hook and you just can't keep up with everything, then your number one constraint may be a capacity issue. And that could be you need another provider or providers. You may need multiple docs to satisfy the demand. You may need a bigger office space with more operatories, whatever that is, but you need to figure out what's that number one constraint and put all your efforts into solving that number one constraint, all your resources until it's solved. And then you're going to have another new constraint. And then you tackle that new constraint, and it's a continual process. But the key is to focus on one constraint at a time. That was something that he really emphasized, is you need to simplify things. Stop doing 10 things all at once because you're doing them all poorly. You want to do one main focus and find out what's that number one constraint, put all your efforts into that. And then once that's solved, you can go on to the next one. So that was a big take home message for me. He said, you want to simplify everything you're doing and go back to the basics. So a lot of times we are making things too complicated. We're trying to do TikTok and Facebook and YouTube and Valpak ads and billboards and whatever else, and along with all the CE and all this new technique we're going to try out, and we're going to do some perio and some implants and some endo and do wisdom teeth and do it all great. That's tough. You want to really simplify and see what can I do really well, what can I do predictably, and do that over and over and over, and everything else just simplify. Either eliminate it, outsource it, minimize it, or just don't do it, period. You want to keep things simple. So how do you simplify things and get back to the basics in your practice? Another thing he said is CEOs should think like value investors, meaning you want to find ways to get the greatest return with the minimal amount of risk. So what is the greatest way that you can find, maximize your profits in a practice and minimize your risk? That's what you want to look at as a CEO of any business, but especially a dental practice, and look at it as a value investor. If you're buying new equipment, is this equipment going to add value to my practice? Is it going to be a nice shiny object that's going to sit in the corner after a few months and be an expensive paperweight, or is it going to be something that's going to really add value to better serve our patients, improve the bottom line, etc.? So you want to really make sure you're thinking like a value investor. And also another one is basically, what is the greatest return that you can get with minimal risk? And just anything you do, really focus on that. Another big thing is when you make your business more valuable, and I'm going to cover different things they covered on how to make your business more valuable. It's beneficial whether you're going to sell your business to private equity at some point, whether you're going to sell it to an associate, or you're going to keep it and be 90 years old, kind of sitting in the corner, but still collecting money from your practice with other providers. Regardless of how you're going to do it, the concepts are the same, and you want to make sure you're doing the things that are going to increase the value of your practice. You want to, with billing, this was something interesting. If you bill for something, say you've got an in-house insurance program in your clinic, or anything that you're billing for, he said, unlike what most people do, most people have a monthly subscription, and you can do that, but if you can bill it annually, you're much better than billing monthly, or if you can bill it quarterly, you're much better. And the idea behind that is, say it's $2,000 annually, it's a chunk, but they pay it once and then they kind of forget about it and that's it. If they are paying for that monthly, a lot of times they're like, man, this is a big monthly bill. I'm paying it over and over and I haven't gone there for 6 months or 10 months, whatever it is. And so they may end up canceling it. Whereas if they pay annually, usually you pay it, you'll notice it, obviously that first bill when you pay it, and you want to make sure you're adding value around the time when they are paying it. But then usually they forget about it and they won't think about it till the next year when they have to renew. So if you can bill less often, that's a better strategy overall. Another quote they said is, do more. Basically, volume negates luck. And so no matter what you're doing, if you can do more of it, you're going to get better at it, whether it's more procedures of the same procedure, if you're going to be doing more advertising in a certain manner or a certain channel, whatever it is, more is better. So volume negates luck. So don't try one thing, try one time you did a Facebook ad or you did a Valpak coupon and didn't get any responses. Okay, so you're done. How was that ad? How was that distributed? It could have been better. Just find ways to increase the volume, hopefully where you're getting a return too, not to say just spend willy-nilly without a return, but you want to have volume to know if something's working or not before switching, because you can't say this doesn't work if you just tried it once or twice and you really haven't put the volume into to get a good answer on something. A couple of things that cause a business to be valued less. What are some of the risks that make a business less valuable? And this includes in a practice. One is a key man risk. And a lot of dental practices, in fact, most dental practices, unfortunately, this is a problem with dental practices, is there's obviously a key man risk. Unless you've got multiple providers, if your key man, that dentist goes down, well, the value of the practice goes down. Because even if they bring in somebody else, they may not be as good as the senior doctor, and the new guy may not be as good as the previous doctor, and he or she is who has all the relationships with the patients. And so if they leave, a lot of times the patients leave. And so if you have a key man risk, then that is a concern. A key customer risk. This is where, say you've got one main referral source and they go away, you're in big trouble. Example is if you are a manufacturer for a part that sells to GM and your only customer is GM Motors, if GM for whatever reason ever goes out of business or they stop liking your part, you're out of business if they stop buying your product. Whereas if you had multiple customers, multiple patients, multiple referral sources, it may hurt, but it's not going to put you out of business. And so key customer risk is a problem. Single channel risk. And this gets more with advertising, but it could be applied to different ways. If all the advertising you do for your practice is on Instagram, and for whatever reason Instagram isn't happy with one of the posts you make, your implant that you placed was too bloody and they cancel you or whatever it could be, well, you may have no channel for marketing now because your marketing channel went away. So a little bit of a double-edged sword, because he says you want to minimize things and simplify, but also there are risks if you get everything from one channel. And so if you can have a variety of ways that patients can come in your door, that's a benefit because you don't have that key channel risk. Market risk. Obvious market risk is if you're selling phone books today, that market's shrinking more and more every single year. So that's a bad market risk that you don't want to be in that market. And so similar in dentistry, if there's something where you're a practice and all you do is amalgam, well, obviously that's not going to be ideal long term. You need to have a variety of things that you're offering for your market. So market risk, data risk, and this was another big point that he goes over with data. How important knowing the numbers in your practice are, where if you do not know the numbers in your practice, you really are flying blind. And there are luckily not a lot of numbers in a dental practice that you need to know. I mean, you obviously need to know how many patients are coming in. You need to know your revenue, your expenses, your dental supplies, your staff overhead, things like that. But if you don't know what the numbers are, you really are flying blind, and you don't know what to correct because you don't know where the leaks are. You don't know where the revenue is coming from. So you need to have your data. You also need to have your data in a timely manner. You want it to be accurate. If your CPA is only giving you a profit and loss statement once a year or once a quarter, that's probably not enough. Ideally, you should be getting that monthly, every single month, and it shouldn't be the end of the month from the last month. It should be as close to the beginning of the next month as possible, so that you can have real data to fly your plane, to fly your practice, to make sure it's going the right direction. And if there's something that's off, make that course correction sooner than later. Also, if you can have your data automated or consolidated, have it all in the same spot, is helpful. Company culture matters. That's another big thing that kept coming up, where even these expensive consultants like Bain and Company and McKinsey, they've looked at how, great companies, they almost always have a great culture. And they talked about how top talent, they obviously want money, but that's usually not the number one driver. Sometimes not even number two driver. That usually the number one driver for top talent is to do something that is meaningful to them, where they feel like they're empowered and they're making a difference and their work is meaningful. So we want to include that. When we want to have amazing team members in our practice, we need to find ways to help them find meaning in their work, make them feel empowered, make them feel valuable, give them areas for growth, and really encourage the team to be eagles, to spread their wings and do good things. And that's going to not only help the practice, but also help them feel empowered and happy and stay around long-term in your practice. EBITDA, that's another big thing that comes up with businesses, and including in dental practices. There's a lot of private equity coming into the dental space, as there are in a lot of spaces. And whether you think this is awesome, whether you think this is awful, or somewhere in between, it really doesn't matter, because it's happening whether we like it or not. And it's just, you should be aware of what's coming and either position yourself to not be a part of it, or position yourself to be a part of it, or wait and see. But either way, you should understand how businesses are valued. A big thing that is a key determinant of a business is the EBITDA. What is the EBITDA of the practice, or EBITDA, as they like to say more? And EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Say that 5 times. That's a tongue twister. But essentially, what is the earnings? And again, before you subtract the taxes, before you subtract debt, That's one reason that private equity can really grow the value of businesses, because they don't have to include debt on their taxes and debt, depreciation, amortization against the value. So, but that's where they get that number, that EBITDA. And there are ways to increase the EBITDA and decrease the EBITDA. Some I already mentioned, some of those key risk factors. Another big one is for the value of the practice, to have your practice be more valuable. They want to see trends, meaning if your practice is better 2 years ago than it was 3 years ago, and better last year than it was the year before. Essentially, if you're growing every year and then this year you're on tune to do your best year ever, where each year is better, that's a good sign. That's a good growth sign that your practice is doing well and your practice is going to be valued more. Whereas if your practice, say there were two exact practices, they both made annual revenue of $2 million a year, but the one practice went from 1.5 to 1.7 to 2 million, and the other one was at 2.3 million, then 2 million, then 2 million again. The first that is going up in value is going to be valued higher than the one that's stagnant or going down in value. So that's something to consider, especially if you are considering selling. You want to really ramp up your systems, ramp up the juice in the practice, so it's going to be more profitable right before you sell it, because you want to be on a high note when you sell to get the top value of your practice. When advertising, some different things to consider. You want to consider your ad creative of the advertising, the messaging, the targeting. Who are you targeting that to? And you may want to segment ads. For example, you don't want to just be the practice that does root canals and does extractions and does operative and does veneers and does yada, yada, yada. Even though you may do all those things, you may want to do an advertisement where all you're focusing on is Invisalign patients and bringing a bunch of Invisalign patients. The next one may be you want to start doing more pedo, so you're really focusing on children for that advertising. Next one may be implants and focusing on a different older demographic for implants. So really think about that when you are doing your advertising, to target and segment who you're focusing on. And the platforms that you put that on may vary based on the target patient that you're looking for. He talked about scripting, and any good business, you should have scripts, especially with the phones and when you're presenting treatment, things like that. It shouldn't just be winged, or Sally says it like this because Susan told her how to do it, before, and then she just does it how Susan did it. Well, that's not a good situation usually, because it may, even though Susan may be great, you want it to be streamlined where everybody's saying similar things and it's been scripted, it's been planned out and practiced over and over with role playing, so they can say it in their sleep and eventually get to where it's said, where it doesn't sound like a script. They're just saying it because they know it so well, but it's the same message. And so you want to really focus on scripting the things that you say, especially how the phones are answered, how insurance is being presented, how you're presenting treatment plans, all those things. Follow-up. That's another big thing that great businesses do, is follow-up. Anytime a patient comes into your office and does not schedule for whatever reason, you want to follow up with those patients daily, weekly, monthly. Just continue to follow up until either they tell you to jump off a cliff or they schedule. But you really want to continue following up, because the longer that takes to follow up, the less likely they're going to either schedule with you or say it's a tooth that could be saved, but they waited so long, now it's got to be extracted. And so follow-up is key to get them in the door, and you're really doing them a service, because they obviously need the treatment, but if you don't follow up, either they're not going to get it or they'll get it elsewhere that likely is not as good as in your office. So you want to make sure you're following up with your patients. With new hires, you want to be clear on what's expected of them, and then find out what are their expectations, what are their goals and aspirations, and how can you help them achieve their goals within your practice, within the vision of your practice. Because if you can do that, you're going to have happier team members and less turnover in the practice, which makes everything more efficient, more effective. You want to have a good reputation in the community. That's going to make your life easier in a lot of ways. When you have a good reputation, it's easier to get referrals. Patients are happier. It's easier to apply or to attract great talent. When you're hiring, everything is better when you've got a good reputation. So do everything you can to either clean up your reputation, keep it strong, or make it better, because reputation matters, especially in a local market like a dental market. And a quote by Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett he talks about is you should only have to get rich once. If you do things right, if you're investing smart, in my opinion, buying assets that produce cash flow, you only have to get rich once, and then you can benefit from that the rest of your life. If you do a lot of different speculative things, you may have to get rich multiple times and you may never get rich because you continually lose it. So be wise in your investments. Don't invest in anything you don't understand very well. And even if I would say always get good advice, but ultimately don't do anything that you don't understand yourself, and really do your own homework, because nobody's going to be as committed to your financial success as you are. And if it's too complicated to understand, it's probably not worth doing, because most good investments, in my opinion, are not that hard to understand. And I've done a lot of different investments, and the ones I've done the best in are the ones I understand the best, and they're actually fairly straightforward, that with 5th grade math, you could figure out if it's a good deal or not. And the ones that I've lost money, I didn't fully understand, or it was somewhere that's not in my wheelhouse of expertise, and that's why I lost money. And so I got experience, they got money. So to avoid that, be very cautious of where you invest, know what you're investing in, and if you don't know, then just hold tight till you do understand it, because you want to be smart. You only have to get rich once. Those are some of the biggest ideas I got from Alex and Leila Hormozi. Hope that helps, and have a great day. Thanks.